First, Marlene Dietrich and Colin Fish in The Mirror, recorded in 1965.
A house. John Smith's house.
And Mary's?
4 windows square. Square door, square chimney.
Square house. I remember it. I lived there.
And I lived there.
Same house, different place, different street.
I was born in a room.
And I was.
In that house. The nurse put me in a cot by the window, and I cried.
The nurse put me in bed with my mother. She cried.
My mother laughed.
My mother wanted a son.
When I was small, there were 100 rooms in that house, full of clocks and legs, full of breathing and silence. But as I grew, the house shrank. And when I learned to count, there were 6 rooms.
My mother took me for walks in the park every afternoon, and the sun shone every day, like my smile. I was dressed in pink. I had a curl in every hair and a ribbon in every curl. I was very pretty.
My mother was very pretty.
My mother was beautiful.
There was a kitchen in that house, blue and white. Dishes on the dresser, crumbs on the cake dish. My kitchen smelled of sultanas and candied peels. So did my mother. My mother was the best cook in the world.
You should have married your mother.
I married you, Mary. I had a father.
I had a father.
There was a garden in that house. Rolled lawn, long rows, roses, runner beans. No fish pond because my mother was afraid of fish ponds. Because of me.
Our garden had a fish pond and no fish because of the cat. Our garden had a shed.
Our garden had a shed. And the shed had a mower, a pair of tea towels, a pram, and me if it was wet.
If it was fine, I slept in the garden all morning with a cat.
I liked that garden.
I lived in it.
There was a street for that house. Lace curtains and aunties.
Kisses and toffee.
Lampposts and lame dogs.
And a shop on the corner, all caramels and comics.
A house in a street on a map.
Stone church, chain store.
Everything you've seen before. I was walked to the end of the high street, caught once, bought twice, and I was back at the square door.
Square house.
My house.
And mine.
I had a brother.
I had a sister.
My mother cried.
My mother cried.
My mother wanted a girl.
I cried. I didn't want anything.
My brother wore lace cuffs and a quiff. He went to ballet lessons. He lisped.
My sister had big feet, straight hair.
My brother's an engineer.
My sister married.
I grew up in that house, and I went to school. When I was 5, I went to school.
And I did.
A big school with big children. Children were big when I was small. I was into babies. I didn't like it. Boys in jumpers, girls in knickers, teachers in smocks and moustaches. There were no pretty teachers.
Only pretty girls.
I was top of the middle class. I was captain of football with my ball. I was captain of cricket with my bat.
I was good.
I took apples for teacher and ate them myself.
I took flowers for vases and arranged the class.
Once upon a time, there was time. Plenty of time.
I learned to knit.
I walked in the woods. I had a forked stick for grass snakes. I had worms for tiddlers and tiddlers for me. I had a piece of string for my Alsatian corgi.
I didn't have a dog.
You had a cat.
I learned to sharpen my nails.
I had a cave in the woods built out of twigs and leaves. I was an ancient Briton. I ate green apples, stole turnips, smoked dandelions. I was sick.
I ate chocolate mice, licorice whirls, pear drops. I was sick.
I put farthings on the railway lines. I let trains squash them into shillings. I put them into slot machines for stamps.
I learned to curl my hair.
I threw a firework through a window on Guy Fawkes night. It exploded in the pantry. There was jelly on the ceiling.
I stayed at home.
I was a devil.
I was an angel.
I was a boy.
I was a girl. When I was young, I was 16. I had a dress that reached down to the ground in 10 layers of sequined net, cut in scallops, embroidered by hand.
I greased my hair until it oozed in smooth streams to the spots at the top of my pimpled beard.
There were gym slips.
And legs. Blazers.
And love. I read about love.
And I did.
Byron for bed, Wordsworth for uncle.
I held onto street corners and gobbled the girls.
I went to parties and ate the boys.
When did time stop? I don't remember, but I think it did.
The 1st of April.
You walked down the street in front of me. You came out of that house, and I saw you. High heels, high head high up to my shoulders. That was the first time I saw you, Mary.
I had seen you from that house. I had seen you, and I'd waited.
You were beautiful.
I had waited to be beautiful.
And then there was no time. No time for walking in the woods.
Only with me. We walked in the woods together.
They were different woods. The grass was soft when I'd never known the grass was soft before. The secret places closer, darker. The hedges twice as tall, the brambles twice as gentle.
Like your lips, John.
And yours, Mary. April and a long spring.
I was a woman.
I was a man. I was a devil.
I folded my wings.
I was born in a room. I lived in a house. I loved a woman. And I worked.
I worked.
I liked work.
I hated it.
I slept every night in that room.
And every morning...
Have you ever heard a morning, Mary? Have you ever listened to one? If I sat on a rug over somewhere with only my ears on, I would know a morning.
And from morning to work.
I liked work.
I hated it. Tick-tock, clock and out.
9 to 5, nicely. Nice day, Tom. Dick, Harry. Nice day, Eve. Afternoon, Smithson, Thompson, Johnson. Afternoon, Eve. Evening, sir, boss, Mr. Cohen. Evening. And Eve.
And me.
And you, Mary. And there was work every day of the week.
Not Sunday.
I liked Sunday.
And I did.
I slept every Saturday night in that room.
And on Sunday morning?
You don't listen to a Sunday morning. You sleep.
I liked Sunday in the summer.
Everything to do, and one day to do it in. When I was small, I remember Sunday.
Best frock.
Best suit.
Best day of the week.
Cream and Bibles.
Peppermints and pulpits.
Sunday school.
Sometimes.
When I was small, I scrubbed for Sunday.
Not now.
Sweaters and sweating.
Push bikes and pushing.
Seaside.
Sometimes. Sundays in the summer with you, John.
Fields and picnics and country lanes. Pubs, hot beer, hot kisses.
Comes Monday.
There were evenings.
And Eve.
And you, Mary.
There was dancing.
And drinking and talking.
And giggling. And Eve.
And you, Mary. There was winter.
Fires in front parlors.
Feet in the snow.
Eyes on the moon.
Frost in Lover's Lane.
Love in fur boots.
There were Sundays. There were evenings. There was life.
What was life?
I don't know. But we lived in it.
When I was young, I had a dream that reached out for my day's sleep in fine layers of spider net, spun in tangles, embroidered by plan.
I joined the Young Conservatives for the socials. I joined the Socialists because I was young. I wasn't interested in politics.
I wasn't interested in anything but you, John, and babies.
I had a blue shirt and a white tie.
I wanted a white dress. I looked in shop windows at a white dress and a white ring.
I wanted to travel to the edge of a white beach.
I wanted a white house and a white baby.
I wanted the whole white world.
I got what I wanted.
I didn't go anywhere.
Only to church with me, John. It was my day. The day was mine and everything in it, especially you, John.
It was your day, and you were very pretty.
I was beautiful. I wore my white dress.
I sat on the edge of your dream and watched mine fade.
I was a froth of whipped cream, set in peaks of icing. I had a veil of pure frosting.
I kissed the cake and cut the bride.
My mother cried. She was losing a daughter.
My mother cried. She was losing a son.
I cried. I wasn't losing anything.
I didn't cry, but I wanted to.
It was a lovely day. It was my day. Eve was my bridesmaid. She caught my bouquet. But not you, John.
Time for the train.
I traveled in dusty pink with smoky accessories.
I cleaned the bride and kissed the seat.
All aboard.
For Seaville.
Forever.
Sea view, sea lane. See nothing but you, Mary.
Love.
And confetti.
Kisses.
And rice. I was the lover to end all lovers. I knew it all. I'd read it all. I did it all.
I cried.
I wanted to.
I had a night dress of sheer nothing.
I had striped pajamas of solid cotton that revealed nothing. My mother bought it for me.
You should have married your mother.
I married you, Mary.
Sea view, sea lane. See me, John.
I saw you all, Mary.
I liked Seaville. I liked walking along the promenade. I liked sitting in the rock garden pavilion.
I liked lying on the beach watching your skin turn brown.
I remember boat trips around the harbor.
I remember the bits that stayed white.
Tennis and tea shops and dancing under the tinsel stars.
And bed.
So much to do in Seaville. so tired.
Yes, Mary.
Good night, John.
Good night.
2 weeks of heaven called honeymoon, called Seville. We'll come back when we are old and died. When children have grown away, we'll come back, and it'll be all the same. Nothing will have changed, except you and me.
Once upon a time, I traveled to work. I liked work.
And I did. I worked every day in that house. I waved you goodbye through the window and lived through glass.
I lived.
I cooked cakes for my cake tin and had friends for tea. I breathed on the polish and dusted my breath.
I brought you home presents of money and me. I read you the paper. I slept in your chair.
I toasted your slippers.
I was a sultan with a single slave. I was the Rajah of our house, the Caliph of our castle.
I was a good wife.
Yes, Mary.
My house, my husband, my baby.
There was that room where he was born. The nurse put him in your arms.
My mother cried.
My mother cried.
We all cried. We were so happy.
My son.
My Johnny.
I filled in the fish pond, bought a net for the cat.
I put the pram in the garden, if it was fine. I put the pram in the conservatory, if it was wet.
We didn't have a shed.
It was a beautiful pram, all chrome springs, frilled, little ducks and a big baby and a big cot, all fluff, starch, net, little bears and a beautiful baby. I sang lullabies in my sleep and rocked him for my pillow.
I slept. There were the evenings.
For you, John.
There was the pub, hot beer, hot words. What happened to the kisses?
There was Johnny.
There was the garden. I liked the garden. Wallflowers and marigolds, brambles and bindweed.
And Johnny.
If the sun shone. He had a birthday every year, and every year was his birthday. Train sets and Tommy gun, toy whistles, tin drums. He wanted the world, and I bought it.
He walked, spoke, ran, swam, jumped, sang when he was 1 year old.
I planted a tree and built him a tree house. I bought him a wigwam. He called it a tent. There was the pub and the garden. And there were holidays. I waited for holidays.
And I did.
I wanted holidays, and I knew what I wanted.
And I did. Seville.
Johnny liked Seville.
I liked it.
I hated it. Sea View, Sea Lane.
Once a year.
Every year. I carved castles from rock and built them on sand. And you laughed when they fell down.
Funny castles. We paddled in pools. We swam in the sea.
We ate in gravy. We slept in bed. I sat on the quay wall and dropped a pebble in a boat. It sailed for the open sea and sank.
I was pregnant.
Once upon a time, there was no time. Only babies.
I had a body that stretched out in front in one rise of child swell and check smock.
I looked in your eyes. I laced up your shoes. There was that room where she was born. And I don't remember what the nurse did. I wasn't there at the time, and I don't remember.
I don't remember who laughed or who cried, except Johnny. He jumped on my stomach. I smacked him. I was very busy.
I bought fish for the fish pond and locked up the cat.
I put the pram in the garden, wet or fine. The conservatory was full up.
She had a birthday once a year, every year. She wanted the world, and I couldn't buy it.
When she was 1 year old, she was 1 year old.
I painted the treehouse. I unwrapped the wigwam. She called it a wigwam. When she was young, there were woods. There were tall towers of fern branch and long plaits of ivy hair, waiting for the white horse and the white prince.
Johnny hammered nails into planks and made a shelf for his hammer.
There were wild flowers in wild places. The end of the rainbow in a pot of gold. Seashells and beach pebbles.
I was very busy.
And I was. And little Mary. And then she was Big Mary. And all the time there was work. Work and more work. I liked work. John, Tom, Harry, Dick, Smithson, Johnson, Thompson, and Eve. I looked at Eve, and I saw you, Mary.
I was busy.
And I was. I looked at Eve, I put out a hand, and I looked at her.
I worked in my blue and white kitchen. There were dishes on my dresser and cakes on my cake dish. My kitchen smelled of shops and packets. I was very busy.
I looked at my garden, and I thought.
I thought.
What did you think about?
Mumps and measles, adenoids, tonsils, spots, rashes, flu, chests, diarrhea, twice a year.
I thought about growing old. I sat in my garden and watched a rose.
I sewed in my kitchen and watched you. The rose died.
I sat in my garden and I thought.
I thought.
What did you think about?
I thought about war when there was talk of war.
There was always talk of war.
They talked about war, and I thought about it. I'd hear the soldiers in the street. I'd hear the music of their feet.
I'd listen to the band and I'd follow it.
I'd be proud. When I was a woman, I dreamed of a soldier. I dreamed of a chest full of khaki and brasso and the kiss of a hero.
When I was a boy, I had a fort on my eiderdown. I marched round the bedroom, saluted the mirror, breathed on my pajama medals, and polished my slippers.
My soldier would go away, and I would knit him letters of balaclava love. I would touch his piano photo and think of his trench. My soldier would go away, and he'd come back.
I'd listen to the bombs, and I'd fight them.
I'd be proud.
I would sing hymns in my dugout and send the dead to sleep. War and death. Dirt and death.
For someone else, not for you and me.
I would come back, and I would gather my children on my knee and talk of the battle of far off and tell them of far away. I would show them my shrapnel and my sword, my bow and arrow and my souvenir mushroom. We would sit in the day of peace and talk of the dark until the dark would be filled with marching songs and glory.
I would be very proud.
We would buy a poppy for a day and forget.
You would come back, and it would be the 1st of April. We would go away to be together, to be alone, at last and forever, to Seville.
And I would remember far off and far away, because I'd been there. I would sit in Seville and see somewhere, because I'd known it all. I would put away my toys of war and keep them for my son. Once upon a time, there was peace. Church bells, quiet and peace.
I like peace.
Peace is very quiet.
Knit one, purl one, plain patterns are very dull. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, Easter, Whitsun, Christmas Day. I liked Christmas.
And I did.
In that house when turkey was Christmas. Holly in every corner, and every corner filled with puddings, pies, and promises.
Father Christmas landed on the black roof, climbed down the white chimney, kissed his wife.
Ate the mince pies, drank the port.
Dropped the sack, tripped over the tree.
Smoked a cigar, scorched the paper chain.
Gave Johnny a baby doll.
And little Mary, Meccano. I liked Christmas in that house, with snow that never was, and dreams that never will be. Balloons in every room, and every room bursting with love.
Comes cold.
One morning, I woke up in that room. I looked at you, John, and you were old.
I had a forehead built for a steeple and a cough born on a rack. I remember that morning. It was my birthday. I opened my eyes and watched a young man go out by the door. I looked in the mirror and saw 40.
I was 40. I looked in the mirror. I didn't like it.
I looked at Johnny and looked for myself.
He took his hammer to work, and he worked.
Little Mary worked. She sat at a desk and flew off on her stool. When she was young, she had curls that reached down to her waist in one layer of hairtail and horse gold. She locked up her dresses and smoked a pipe dream of backwoods and outbacks. She took a car to nowhere and never went.
Johnny looked in shop windows and shop windows at a steel plane and a pound of screws.
I bought him a ticket. He wanted the train. I looked at him and I saw nothing.
I looked at a white dress and I saw it all.
Little Mary sat at her desk and flew down an aisle of husbands and honey. She stood at the edge of my dream and walked away.
My mother died.
My mother died.
It was a lovely funeral. Tea and tears.
In a long, slow crocodile. Middle age, middle spread. Life moved in a circle. I sat in the center. I let out my trousers and broadened my mind. I went to classes for woodwork. I didn't make anything.
I went to classes for cookery.
I ate your chips. I played darts for my weight and golf for my thirst. It was bowls in the summer.
I did good when I could.
I slept every night in that house. And one morning, I'd bought it. I knocked a nail in my wall. I sat on my floor. I put a fence round my eye.
I wanted the house.
You got what you wanted.
Machines and motor cars.
And babies.
Johnny took his hammer to Hong Kong. Little Mary married and moved. I was left in that house.
My house. I pulled up my drawbridge and watered my moat.
I sat in my kitchen keep and cried. I looked for you, John, and I wasn't there.
I slept in your bed, and I'd gone away.
Rooms and silence, words and walls. I opened the door, and I couldn't walk.
I walked out of that house to work. I went to work and I thought.
I thought.
What did you think about?
New hat, new shoes.
New time to lose. I went to work and I thought big and bigger.
And I did.
I talked more and more, knew more, drank more, grew more.
And I did.
I stepped up, kept up. I was a big man. I was a devil.
I feathered my wings.
I looked at you, Mary, and I saw Eve. I looked at you, and I touched her.
I looked at a silver dress and a silver ring. I put the years in a box and wrapped them in glitter. I was very busy.
And I was.
White and silver.
Gold and dark.
Life moved in 4 shades.
Caught in color.
I looked in shop windows, and shop windows, at a silver ship and a silver sea.
I was sick.
It was my day. The day was mine and everything in it.
Not me, Mary.
I was a frost of pale stars and pure steel.
I kissed the knife and cut the cake.
I was very beautiful.
I didn't look.
All aboard,
For sea cruise.
past Seaville,
Forever.
sea cruise, sea sleep. See nothing at all, John.
I wore a pair of shorts below my knee and a belt below my waist. I knotted a handkerchief over my head and tied up my thoughts.
I sat under a plate glass sun and swam in a plastic pool.
I walked to the edge of a white rail and looked at the sea.
Deck tennis and tea time and dancing under the slant sea star.
And bed.
Nothing to do. Not tired.
Bed. I looked out of a porthole and watched the world float by.
I liked the world.
I was sick.
Back to that house and that garden.
Back to work, and Eve was old, and I was.
I tidied my tidy house. I went for walks in the park and looked in prams.
I grew champion Swedes. I got first prize for turnips.
I sat in the park and looked at pictures. I put my glass grandson in a paper bag and wheeled him home.
There were coffins and cards, dominoes, and death. One morning I woke up in that room. It was Monday. I listened to Monday, and I went to sleep.
I cleaned round your feet. I dusted your elbows. I blew the cobwebs out of your hair.
I put the clock on its face and wound up the wool. I walked to the edge of a wide desk, looked through the bars and counted my change. If it was fine, I sat in the garden with the cat. If it was wet, I sat in the conservatory.
The conservatory was empty.
So was the house. I sat in my garden and thought.
I thought.
What did you think about?
Breakfast, dinner, tea, and supper. Every day of the year.
I thought about being young. I sat in my garden and saw my woods.
They cut down the trees and grew houses.
There was a house. There was work. There was Mary. There was life.
What was life?
I don't know, but we lived it.
Lock up the cat, John. Put out the fish. Time for tea. John. John. Poor John. When I was young, I knew a man called John. And he loved me. And he loved me. And he loved me until the day he died.